Hello to my Valorant 7.09 PB patch notes rundown. It is PBE, so it isn't like guaranteed that everything will make it into the live patch when it goes live. I think on the 31st of October or the 1st of November. I think it's like the early morning of the 1st of November for me. But yeah, for agent updates, Cypher, Sky, Fade, and Raze. This patch we're looking to address some issues in the balance of power between Sentinels, especially Cypher, and some other agents on the roster. Sentinels often craft very deliberate setups only to have agents like Raze, Sky, and Fade destroy them with typical utility use. In this patch, we're updating Cypher's trapwire to try to sway these interactions more in his favour, and to encourage enemy agents to have to be more intentional and deliberate if they aim to use their utility to counter Sentinel setups. Yeah, so Cypher's kind of been like the punching bag of like agent select in some ways, where because you can't see the enemy team, he kind of suffers because he gets quite hard countered, unlike quite a few other agents. I think he's like the most counterable. Kind of sucks for him as an agent. And by typical utility use as well, I think it's mainly aimed at Sky and Fade, but Raze as well can basically just switch up her gameplay slightly to incorporate being able to do a Cypher. And it's just really frustrating as someone that does play Cypher when you are playing against sometimes multiple of these, and Sova as well sometimes. Can be really, really difficult. Although Silver is very different because he actually has to intentionally shoot you, like shock dart it usually. And usually people have to know lineups for it, otherwise they risk getting killed by peeking out and shooting the trips with their shocks. Sometimes anyway. But yeah, that's off topic really. But yeah, Sky and Fade definitely were like the main culprits for Cypher kind of not being very happy basically. On site, basically using up one trip instantly. With the dogs, or like dog and prowler, that sort of stuff. And as I said, Raze can sort of use Satchel, like adapt to playing against Cypher by doing that. So we're going to look at the actual changes. So Trapwire, decrease the time until the trap concusses a captured enemy from 3 seconds to 1.5 seconds. After concussing an enemy, or an enemy in the trap was killed, the Trapwire no longer destroys itself, but instead rearms after 0.5 seconds, allowing it to ensnare another enemy. And duration of tag slow when hit by the trap increased from 0.75 to 2 seconds. So generally it's more punishing when you get actually hit by the stun, and it does that sooner. The most important thing here is probably after concussing an enemy or an enemy in the trap killed, it rearms itself. So it means that if you didn't shoot the trap, the next person in line is going to get hit by the trap too. And this can be frustrating for, I think this could be frustrating for people like attacking a site where in situations like on B Breeze or B Sunset, where that unbreakable trip exists, where you kind of need the util to deal with it. It can be quite frustrating potentially when the first player out has to shoot their own trip because the other people basically can't shoot it unless they're coming out level with the first person out. And that can create some bad situations for them because they can get AoE'd by like other util like mollies and nades, etc. Like all that sort of stuff. Spray down even through smokes, like both of them can get sprayed down at once, that sort of stuff. It can be quite annoying, and sometimes, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like too different from if they were coming out just a bit separately, but it still is like pretty annoying to deal with. It's also going to change the dynamic of how you come out onto a site or playing against Cypher. Like the first player really does not want to be shooting their own trip, and they don't have much time to shoot it either, 1.5 seconds. So if you are mixing up the heights of your trips, which we'll go onto in a second, it can be really, really bad for them because they have to like mix up where they're pre-aiming the trip. Also, it can be really frustrating too because if you place it correctly, none of the util from Sky or Fade is going to actually be able to deal with it. So this is like the buff to head height trips, and I'll go over that in a second. So these changes to Sky and Fade are meant to add more strategic depth to the placement of Cypher's trapwire. So basically what this is it's buffed head height tripwires, and semi-buffed mid height and foot height versus Fade. So what's happened is Trailblazer adjusted Trailblazer's collision so that it goes under trapwires placed at mid height. This won't affect the hitboxes for weapon damage. So basically what this is that Sky Dogs will have to jump to get the mid height trip, I'm pretty sure. And they won't be able to get a head height trip anyway. And then the Prowler adjusted Prowler's collision so that it goes over trap wires placed at foot height and under trap wires placed at head height. This won't affect the hitbox for weapon damage. Basically, against Fade, you have two options. You have foot height trips and you have head height trips. Both of those will work against Fade. Against Sky, you can use head height trips. Basically, head height trips are going to be like the main winner from this, is that they are buffed versus utility. They also technically might be a bit more buffed as well, and I'll go over that in a minute versus Raze. But generally, foot height trips versus Fade will work, head height trips versus Fade will work, and head height trips versus Sky are going to catch them out. Obviously, they have their inherent weaknesses, which are a head height trip won't catch someone crouching through, so they're not the greatest at like holding a flank, etc. But they will stop things like Prowler and Trailblazer from hitting, which is pretty good, right? And also, you might not have to worry about that too much with some of the, mainly the unbreakable ones, because they can't be broken by a dog anyway. So it means that someone does have to actually go out there and break it, unless they have a Raze or a Sova or something along those lines that can deal damage to utility. Then I imagine like you don't really have to mix up the heights of those unbreakables. Next one is Raze. So Raze will have to be more precise with her paint shells in order to deal damage to enemies, including destroying enemy traps. Additionally, Raze will need to be more intentional in picking between using Blast Pack Q for mobility or damage. So most of the time it's going to be mobility, Blast Pack, but there were instances where Blast Pack was being used for damage, where like you could put your enemy into like a really bad position where if they shoot the Blast Pack they die on low health, or if you swing them in like a good timing, then they'll kill you, but they'll die to the satchel anyway. And they can't just shoot the satchel because it just makes it explode and deal its damage. So they can't actually do anything. But I'll just go into satchel first. Satchel doesn't deal damage until fully armed, and satchel arm time has been increased from 0.5 seconds to 1.5. Basically, within this 1.5 seconds, you can shoot the satchel and it won't deal damage to you. That's like pretty good for those sort of situations. They don't appear very often. Honestly, for most players, you probably haven't even been in a situation like that. But yeah, it is there. No, it doesn't happen. And it was quite annoying more than anything, and more so than actually being impactful. But yeah, I do think this is a good change to especially more incentivize the mobility use of Blast Pack. I think is definitely the better option for most players to use and to learn. So I do think that this is a good change. Honestly, for multiple reasons. Paint shells. Primary grenade explosion radius has gone down from 6 meters to 5.5. Secondary explosion radius has gone down from 6 meters to 5.25, and primary explosion radius explosion minimum damage has gone down from 15 to 1, and same with the secondary one, 15 to 1. And the damage multiplied to enemy utility has gone down from 250% to 100%. So this is mainly aimed at Killjoy's ultimate, because paint shells can one-shot it normally right now. But I don't think they can one-shot it now with the 100%. Afterwards, like after this patch, I don't think they'll be able to one-shot it, even if you're right on top of it with the nade. I could be wrong on that. It must just about be enough damage, but I don't think so. Also, this minimum damage can be quite impactful too, because before, if you ever got hit by a nade, you would then one-tappable by a phantom. It's like secondary range, right? It's 140 range, which I can't quite remember off the top of my head, which I should know. Honestly, I should be able to. It's like 15 to something, or 12 to something. I can't quite remember. But yeah, basically it means that you can't get one tapped. That is not as like cut and dry that you would get one tapped by a phantom now. There is like, probably a decent chance if you're like some of these, like you got kind of far away from the nade, that you won't be put below 140. Pretty good. And the part that I was talking about with the tripwires is that a head height tripwire. So Raze's nade explodes in a bubble, right? It's a sphere of explosion radius, right? And when you have a sphere, it's hard to kind of explain. When you have a sphere, it's the thickest at its middle, right? I can't remember what it's called. Radius? No, I can't remember. But basically, the thickest when it detonates on the ground, it's going to make a dome like this, and it's widest in on the ground, right? Which means that foot trips and mid trips have higher chance of getting hit by that orb than the head height trips do, because right, you see it's a dome, right? So it goes like a slant, so it might miss the head height trip and hit the mid and height trips. It might be very small, but clearly, like, they have made this change with that in mind, right? They did say about very up here somewhere, like where Raze is definitely hitting it with typical utility usage, so her nade is hitting tripwire sometimes, and this obviously does lower the chance. but it lowers it more than I think people realize. It doesn't just lower it by 0.5 meters against head height trips. And with head height trips being better versus these things, I can actually see like people actually doing head height trips now, because they actually can dodge all this utility. Obviously with the downside that it doesn't fully watch the flank. And obviously you probably wouldn't do this in that situation anyway. The only time that would ever be detrimental to you is if you, whatever reason, had to leave that site or leave that doorway open and not watching it or whatever. And only that trip is there to watch that. And that's going to be the only time that you really get punished for that trip. Same with the foot height trip as well. But the foot height trip is a bit different because jumping makes sound, but crouching doesn't. So the head height trip is a bit worse than the foot height trip. But there might be actual reason to actually use a head height trip. So that's also what they mean by giving Cypher more not judgment. What am I saying? More choice making or decision making when surrounding his trip. And that's what I wanted to sort of say about that. So now we're going over to Judge. With the changes, we're sharpening the Judge's identity as a hunker down style shotgun, but reducing some of its effectiveness while moving. With the reduced mag size, we're hoping to create more opportunities for enemies to catch a player reloading their Judge, as well as nudge the person with the Judge to be more efficient in order to get multi-kills. So reducing the mag size from 7 to 5, increasing jumping spread from 1.25 to 2.25, and increasing running spread from 0.1 to 0.75. So I'm going to look at this kind of like tackling like each part of these sentences. So the reduced mag size should create more opportunities to catch the person reloading their Judge. So basically what this means is that if you send util like breakable util, so like Rain Aaliyah, more likely Boombot and Dog, Skydog, or Prowlers, then it's going to lower this mag size significantly. So before, if you had to shoot like say a Prowler and a Boombot, you would be on 5 bullets. But now, after this change, you'll be on 3. And 3 shots on the Judge isn't going to be like multi-kill material really. Like if you don't play it like efficiently, you can get 3 kills. That's like your max as well. I would say you're getting like 1 kill, maybe 2. And it definitely doesn't help now that you have to be more efficient, and then you also can't be moving and jumping because that makes you harder to kill, right? So there's more chance that the second player is going to be able to trade you because you won't have the lethality to deal with them, deal with the second person, because you probably will have to fire that extra shot while running, right? Because on the first shot, if you shoot the first person while standing still, that's fine, right? That's fine. But as soon as the next person comes around the corner, they have the ability to pre-aim you. They have the sound. They have all the info they need to pre-aim you, probably. And the odds is that you need to be running or you need to be jumping to survive them. Obviously, at certain ranges, you're going to still beat them with 1 bullet, with like 1 shot. But there is like a more meaningful chance that you need a second shot while moving against that second player or jumping against that second player, and they have more chance to kill you. So I do think like, and obviously if they like, sometimes if you're not efficient with those shots as well, you're going to have like 3 shots left at that point. If the Prowler and the Boombot and then the first player, you're going to have like 2 shots, maybe 1 left. There's a decent chance you don't kill them and have to reload. And I do think that the Judge is nerfed here for sure, in a real way. But I think for the most part, it's still fine. I think it's still the best shotgun. And I still think it's going to cause problems, especially lower down the elos. Although, to be fair, mag size is actually a change targeted at low elo for making it harder to use. That's what mag size kind of generally aimed at, right? It means that you have to be more efficient, and lower rated players aren't efficient, right? So the Judge probably isn't as nerfed for low elo in that sense. Sorry, for high elo in that sense. But it's nerfed because the enemy players will be able to counter you more easily. So I do think that's also part of like the nerf, where though like high elo players will take more of an advantage from the fact you have less shots. But the low rank players will make worse of a use out of these 5 shots, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a nerf for like both ranges, like both sort of sets, like both ends of the spectrum. But for different reasons. I'm not sure if that was like the clearest point that I got across there, but hopefully that was good enough. Social updates, I won't go over this stuff, but basically it's stuff to do with like I don't know. I don't actually know what it is for. Icons and stuff, I guess. Not really that important. Premier practice. So this was stuff I went over on my last video, I think. It was last video? Yeah, it was. On Thursday. So this stuff I've already gone over. So if you want to go check that video, then that's where I'll talk about that. That's where I talk about that stuff. And then fix a rare issue detaching from a rope that would cause footstep noise. I saw this happen to me a couple times, but maybe I just suck. So that could also be the thing. So yeah, that's it for the video. Hopefully you learned some things and you enjoyed, and I will see you